Hey guys, what's up? Alex Scott here with Consordini.com. Now, I talk to a lot of artists and producers and mix engineers in my day-to-day work as a mix engineer and producer. And I know that there's a lot of guys out there who produce beats. You know, either they are rappers themselves or singers themselves and they make their own beats, or they are producing beats for other artists. And one really, really common question that I get from people is, how can I make my beats sound better? How can I mix them better? How can I make them sound more polished and professional? So in this video and in the next couple of videos, we're going to be taking a look at a track from a California-based artist named Fresh Mix, who I'm a huge fan of and really, really pleased to be able to work with. His track is called Preach, and it's sort of a, trap, rap kind of a thing. Fabulous beat. He did it in his home studio, I believe in FL Studio, recorded all the vocals at his place as well. And so I'm going to go through my normal process of mixing a tune like this, starting with, in this video, we're going to mix the beat, and then we're going to take a look at mixing his vocals in a separate video, and then we're going to master the track in yet another video. So you guys are going to get to see kind of each step in the process of taking a track like this, a trap tune, a rap tune, a hip-hop tune, what have you, and going from, just dry stems, the dry recording, all the way through to a final mastered product. So I hope I'm able to give you guys some ideas and maybe some inspiration of things that you can do with your beats or your vocals over the course of these next couple of videos. Now, full disclaimer, this is how I mix. All mix engineers are a little bit different. Everybody's going to think that certain things sound better than others. People are going to want to go for their own unique textures. Some guys like grimy drums, some guys like clean drums. There's a million different ways to do this stuff. So what I am going to be going over is, not an end-all be-all of this is the only way that you can mix your beats, or this is the only way you can make them sound professional. Not at all. This is just what I do and kind of going through my personal process. So I am working in Studio One, but this is applicable, all the techniques that I'm going to be talking about are applicable to anybody using any DAW. If you're in Pro Tools or Logic or Reaper or FL or Ableton or anything, you're going to be able to take these ideas and implement them in your own workflow. I'm also going to be using my own plugins, primarily Console One, which is an SSL 4000 channel strip emulation. So really all it is it's EQ, compression, a little bit of distortion if I need it. So, again, you don't have to have Console One to do any of this. As long as you have an EQ, some different compression plugins, and some basic stuff like that, we're going to be able to do all of the techniques that I'm going to use in these videos as well. So let's take a look. We've got here on screen our session pulled up, as you can see. Now, these are all of our vocals up here at the top. I always put my vocals at the top of the session because to me they are the most important. But we're not going to be worrying about those right now. We are mainly just going to be worrying about the meat of the beat, so to speak. So I've already kind of labeled the tracks and laid them out a little bit, how I think of things. So we've got at the bottom our tag, which is, you'll hear it in just a moment, and that's, most producers put a little, vocal tag or something on their beat to signify that they produced it. Then we have our drums. We have some kick layers that have all been kind of stemmed together into one track. We have a snare rim. We have our main snares, and then we have our hats. We've got kind of an 808 kick that's functioning as a bass, real subby, low bass kind of a thing. We have an arpeggiator. We have some plucks. We have a real cool kind of airy synth, and then we have a little bit of piano. So I'm going to go through and treat each of these elements separately and then get a good balance going on between all of them. Now, regardless of what style of music I'm doing, I always start with the drums, and when I start with the drums, I always start with the kicks. So, and the first step in any of these processes is just to listen to the sound that you have, and to think about what role it's playing in your track. Obviously, the kick drum's very fundamental. It's kind of driving the whole rhythm. So, another thing to keep in mind, especially for guys who are working mainly with software instruments and producing their beats in Ableton or in FL, is that a lot of the sounds that you're going to find in these programs, and a lot of the sounds that you get in like sample packs and sound libraries and Machine or anything like that, they've already been treated a lot of times. They have already been, pumped up, and there's already some compression and stuff. So we can already hear on this kick drum, there's already a good amount of low end, and there's a little bit of grit and distortion to it, a little bit of griminess, which I actually really, really like. So we're not going to be doing anything crazy here. What I am going to do is add a little bit of sustain here in console 1. Okay, and this is transient shaper is what this is doing. So this is taking the sustain of the note, not the attack, not the initial transient, but the sustain, and bringing it out and helping the kick to bloom just a little bit more. So you can do that if you have console 1, obviously you can do it with sustain, and if you have any kind of transient shaping plugin, you can do that in there as well. You can also do it with a compressor by using a really fast attack and a really fast release. That'll help kind of bloom that out. So also, I want to bring out a little bit more of the griminess. So I'm going to use a little bit of distortion. Kind of dialed in to taste. In console 1, this drive is basically transformer saturation, so it's emulating analog distortion. So any distortion plugin that you might have will do that as well. And then last, on this kick, I think I'm just going to add a little touch of 50 hertz thump. Okay? So, and that's really it. So here's without our processing. And there's with. You know, again, we're not really doing a whole lot. We're just giving it a little bit more of what's already there. Because we already like the sound of it. It's already been processed a little bit. So I just want to bring that out and make it as full as it can be. So now moving on to our rim. That's really nice. Now you can see we have a lot of low frequency information in this sample that we really don't need. So we're going to use a high pass filter to cut out some of that low frequency information. And then it's got a really nice transient in the high mids. Yeah, right in there. Right around 1K. So I'm just going to add a broad boost around that. And then I am going to use the drive, just a little touch of saturation on this as well. Okay? Again, nothing crazy. Here it is originally. And here it is with our processing. It's just a little tighter, a little bit fuller. So now, moving on to our main snares. That's still the rim. So again, we have this low frequency information. We don't need any of that. So we're going to roll that up there with a high pass filter. And this one I'd like to bring out a little bit of detail in. So I'm going to use a high shelf in my EQ. Roll it down to start at about 4K. And just boost the top end a little bit. Boost the top end detail. Okay. Hats. Again, see we got a little bit of low frequency information. Don't need that. So we're going to roll that out. And then again, I'm going to use our distortion, but I'm going to use a little bit more of it this time, I think. Yeah, that really pushes things forward in a very, very nice way. So I like that a lot. And there's our beat, or the main part of our beat. So again, if we take away what we've done so far, it still sounds good. We are just making it more of itself. Do a little bit of balancing here. These hats are a little bit hot. Okay. Plain, you know, nice and simple. So now, let's take a look at a couple of the other elements that we have going on. Here we have this really nice, again, you know, 808 kind of kick sub bass thing going on. So, in this case, I'm going to cut out some of this high-end information because there's really nothing there, but there might be just a tiny little bit of like digital hiss or something like that. But I can just see, looking at my spectrum analyzer, even with it, you know, there's really not much information in here. And whenever I see that, I just use a filter to just make sure that we don't have anything going on there, just to clean it up as much as we possibly can. Now, this is already pretty good, but there's a bit of dynamic variance as the you have the transient, the boom, and then it is kind of dying off. So I'd like to even that out a little bit. So we'll use a little bit of compression. I'm going to use a faster attack, a faster release, medium ratio, probably around 4-to-1. And we can see it's doing, come back here. That's actually quite a bit of gain reduction. I only want it doing maybe 5. Yeah, right in there. We don't want to totally crush it. And then we can just bring that up at the fader a little bit. Very nice. Okay, so there's that. There's our bass. There's our beat. So now, let's take a look at some of these synthesizer elements. So here we've got this arpeggiated sound. It's really nice. There's already some delay on it. I'm just, same thing. I'm going to, first of all, high pass. Make sure we don't have any extraneous low-end information we don't need. And this sound is a great example of a place where we can either leave it as it was originally set up, leave it sounding how it originally sounded, or we can do something a little bit more creative with it. And I think that's what I'm going to do. So I'm actually going to make this high pass even more extreme. And then I'm going to low pass it a little bit as well. This creates a band pass filter. And then I'm going to use a compressor as a bit more of an effect. Okay, so let's use our 1176. I'm going to use a setting called All Buttons In. Without getting too technical, this is basically just a really heavy-duty, active... there, you can already hear it doing its thing. It's a very in-your-face compression setting. So you can feel it pumping a little bit in there. There it is without the compressor. And then when I put it in, creates a lot of cool motion to it. Maybe a little bit more top end. Cool. So that's narrowed the sound a little bit, but it's made it into something unique and very, something that really stands out on its own. So take away the processing. That's how the sound originally was. And then add that. And it just it's going to turn it into its own thing. It's going to help it sit in the mix. And I may actually even give it a little bit more top end. Cool. So now we have these plucks. So we have a really high transient in there. And then we have this kind of lushness. So I'm going to add a little bit of reverb to this to help just give it a little bit more space and a little bit more vibe, shall we say. So I'm using a reverb called SAR 1 from Softtube. Fabulous sounding reverb. But you can use any reverb for this as long as you like the sound of it. That's just going to help give it some body, okay? And sit in a unique way in the mix. Again, remove any extraneous low frequency stuff. And then compress a little bit just for good measure. Yeah, that's pretty nice. Okay, so one thing that I'm hearing is that those plucks, they need a little bit more top-end presence. They're getting a little bit buried. So we're going to go right in the middle, as you can see on our spectrum analyzer. Whoop. Right in there is where the note, the kind of the fundamentals of the notes are, and the upper structure harmonics of the notes of that element. So I'm just adding a boost there on my EQ, just to help it make it a little bit more present. Okay. So now we have this really interesting, really airy synth layer. Just like with everything else, I'm going to clean up the low end on it first and foremost. It's also very quiet. So I am going to give it a little bit more gain here, which we can do in Studio One by doing this. So again, it's kind of an unusual sound, and what I really want to do with this is make it very textural, okay? So we can do this a couple of different ways. We can do this with reverbs. We can do this with a little, maybe some modulation, something like that. So I am going to use a reverb, and I'm going to use Eventide Black Hole, which is a really epic, long, kind of ambient reverb. I'm going to actually remove just a little bit more of those lows. Try to lessen the effect of that transient in there. That bloop, bloop. Trying to pull that back a little bit. So that's cool. The reverb really gave it a nice atmosphere. So then finally we have this piano, which is also very quiet. So we're going to do the same thing. We're going to give it some gain. Okay, so it's very soft piano sound. It almost sounds like a piano mic'd from very far away, which is really cool. So again, we're just going to remove any extraneous low frequency stuff. Here I want to bring out a little bit of the attack. So I'm going to, again, use a high notch on our EQ. And just shoot for like the top part of the sound. And get a little bit more attack out of it. I like that. And then the next thing that we're going to do is put a delay on this. I'm going to use my TC Electronic 2290, which I have a little hardware controller here for. So let's get the tempo right. About 700 milliseconds. Nice. Bring it higher in the mix a little bit. So you can hear that. It just helps to kind of create a little bit more vibe with that piano element. And now we just kind of mix the taste. So I'm hearing a little bit of clash with this arpeggiator, so I know that I need to change the EQ on it. So a little bit too much low end in it. So we're going to shift the bandwidth, the bandpass filter, a little bit higher. That's sitting in a much nicer spot. So now you can hear everything in the mix has its own space. The last thing that I'm going to do also is add just a little bit of bus compression on the kit, because that always adds a nice vibe to it. So we're going to use an LA2A, which is kind of an unusual choice, being that it's an optical compressor, but I really like it. Yeah. Just kind of adds some extra vibe to the kit. So again, just to see, here's without all of our processing. And with. Drums are harder, they're more in your face, it really just sounds bigger and fuller. So again, my name's Alex Scott with Consordini.com. Thank you so much for checking out this video. If you guys have any beat mixing tips or tricks, let us know in the comments down below. We'd love to hear from you guys, and we look forward to seeing you in the next video in our series on mixing trap and rap. So thanks again, and we'll see you soon.